My name is Caitlin Cleave. My presentation is titled The Importance of Anti-Racist and Anti-Oppressive Education Within Curriculum, Let's Unlearn. To me, the unlearning process means we apply the lens of critical social justice to all the preconceived notions within society. If we teach our students to do this in their youth, there is no telling how much they will be able to change within society once they leave the schooling system. I decided to choose this topic because I've been on my own unlearning journey since starting my master's degree. In our current social climate, the topics within this presentation must be implemented not only in the curriculum, but in every aspect of our classroom. They are essential teachings that will create change. All definitions are from D'Angelo and Sensoy, Is Everyone Really Equal, 2017. It's amazing. My intentions with this presentation are to discuss some of the most important and valuable topics that are possible of creating change. By normalizing the language and understandings of the terms discussed within this presentation, my hope is that classrooms will evolve to be inclusive spaces for all students. Knowledge is power, but it can also be painful. Identities will be questions with these lessons, so it's important to ease into these topics with your students. There is a stark difference between opinions and informed knowledge. Mainstream culture has normalized the idea that because everyone has an opinion, all opinions are equally valid. This is simply not true. We need to be teaching our students that opinion is the weakest form of intellectual engagement. Create informed knowledge by digging deeper into the point you're trying to prove, and research the topic to create validity. Minoritized groups are defined as a social group that is devalued in society. This devaluing encompasses how the group is represented, what degree to access the resources it is granted, and how the unequal access is rationalized. These groups are usually based on race, gender, class, ability, or sexuality. Students need to acknowledge who around them falls into the minority. My all-time favorite motto is check your privilege. Privilege is applied, given, demanded, received by anyone outside of minoritized groups. Privileged people don't have to deal with the trials and tribulations that minoritized groups have to. Sometimes minoritized individuals can fall into more than one group. This is called intersectionality, and it drastically changes their positionality and experiences within society. Whiteness is defined as the academic term used to capture the all-encompassing dimensions of white privilege, dominance, and assumed superiority in society. Whiteness grants material and psychological advantages that are often invisible and taken for granted by whites. It is important to teach the concept of whiteness and its toxicity within society and how it affects all groups. Prejudice is defined as learned prejudgment about members of social groups to which we don't belong. Prejudice is based on limited knowledge or experience with the group. Simplistic judgments and assumptions are made and projected onto everyone from that group. This concept is so deeply ingrained within our society towards all minorities. If we teach our students early enough to break this practice, it won't need to be unlearned later in life. Discrimination and prejudice go hand in hand. Discrimination is defined as action based on prejudice. When we act on our prejudices, we are discriminating. Children learn prejudices at an astoundingly early age. This further leads to discrimination. It is our jobs as teachers and parents to break this cycle early. We must start the unlearning process within ourselves first. One of the most pertinent questions we must pose our students is, who is oppressed? Oppression is defined as the discrimination of one social group against another backed by institutional power. Oppression occurs at the group or macro level and goes well beyond individuals. Sexism, racism, classism, ableism, and heterosexism are all forms of oppression. Institutional power is embedded into the policies, practices, norms, traditions, and outcomes of institutions. When a form of social bias is institutionalized, it is reproduced automatically and no longer depends on the intentions or awareness of individuals. It is a default or status quo outcome of that institution's work. Generally, institutional power is created to benefit white, wealthy men. Racism refers to white racial and cultural prejudice and discrimination supported by institutional power and authority used to the advantage of whites and the disadvantage of peoples of color. Racism encompasses economic, political, and institutional actions and beliefs that perpetuate an unequal distribution of privileges, resources, and power between white people and the peoples of color. Classism is defined as the systemic oppression of poor and working people by those who control resources, including jobs, wages, education, housing, food, services, medicine, and cultural definitions. There are economic, political, and cultural dimensions to class oppression. The study of wealth is key in the unlearning process. Who has it and who doesn't? Who is in control of it? Ableism is defined as the systematic oppression of people with perceived disabilities. Ableism is based on the assumption that there is a physical, intellectual, and emotional standard for human beings and that this standard is the only one accepted as normal. Because differently abled students are included in the general classroom, the notion of ableism has come a long way over the years in our curriculum and education sector. Heterosexism is a topic that must be challenged in all spaces within education, not just in the health curriculum. It defines the values, attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors that support the primacy of male female intimate relationships. Heterosexism is enforced by institutions and the creation of laws, social policies, and everyday practices that maintain heterosexuality as the innate norm for human intimacy. If we had to define our education system in one word, it would be colonial. It is defined as the name given to European nations' political and economic exploration, settlement, occupation, and the exploitation of large areas of the world beginning in the 15th century. Colonialism resulted in the spread of white European institutional and culture via domination over non-white and indigenous peoples globally. The danger of rose-colored glasses. The idea that students should be taught to see everyone as equals needs to be squashed. Students need to be taught that everyone we encounter brings their own narratives and lived experiences that must be accounted for. Race, gender, class, ability, and sexuality all play a drastic part in how they should be perceived and treated. Students must be taught about this topic so they can further grapple with it when analyzing society. White supremacy is defined as the academic term used to capture the all-encompassing dimensions of white privilege, dominance, and assumed superiority in mainstream society. These dimensions include ideological, institutional, social, cultural, historical, political, and interpersonal aspects. Meritocracy is defined as the ideology that everyone succeeds on their own effort or merit. In a meritocracy, each individual earns what they have through their own talent and skills, and no one has more advantage than anyone else. This is a false notion, as society has set systemic boundaries in place that prevent minority groups from succeeding at the same rate as the privileged majority. In conclusion, all narratives should be included within the curriculum, and all voices hold value in education. These teachings should be ingrained within all areas of the curriculum. Some of these topics are covered within the current curriculum, however, it is written in the narrative of a Eurocentric point of view. It is my hope that these teachings will incite a change within society as a whole.